10 lost B-movie creature feature films that are fantastic. The 1980s were a remarkable time for connoisseurs of the horror genre. With the emergence of slasher movies, Italian cannibals, and zombie movies, theaters and television screens saw the best of top-notch ghost stories and graphic violence in ways that were never seen before. Both independent and mainstream cinema delivered chills down your spine and stayed with you long after the movie was over. All this was possible because of the emergence of the VHS. Within horror, one of the major subgenres was the creature feature films. In this video, we're going to explore 10 lost B-movie creature feature films that are actually fantastic. And not a lot of people are talking about these movies.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Razorback, 1984. The film portrays a gigantic wild boar who terrorizes people in the Australian outback and kills them viciously. When it kills its first victim, a small child, the child's grandfather is initially accused and brought to trial. After he is acquitted, an American TV journalist, Beth, becomes the boar's next victim. Her husband Carl arrives at the scene and attempts to investigate his wife's death. Although the local inhabitants aren't very helpful to him in his quest, a hunter and a farmer offer to join him on the investigation. This Australian natural horror film was based on the 1981 novel written by Peter Brennan. It was also Russell Mulcahy's directorial debut. Now, you must be thinking, really? A giant killer pig? Although the plot of the movie sounds ridiculous, it's actually better than you think. With Mulcahy's exceptional direction, quality cast, and cinematography, Razorback caught a lot of viewers' eyes. Before directing this film, Russell Mulcahy directed music videos for AC/DC, Queen, and Duran Duran, which is why there are various components in it that resemble Mulcahy's trademark style. You can see turbulent speed, flashy camera angles, and stylish visuals. This contributed to its suspense and eeriness. Despite being a B-movie in the 80s, within a sea of subsumption, the special effects used to create Razorback were highly praised. Surprisingly, Steven Spielberg was quite impressed with the special effects of this film and called Russell Mulcahy to find out how he'd created them. Alligator, 1980. Alligator is an American monster horror movie directed by Louis Teague. Ramon, the alligator, gets flushed down the toilet as a baby and grows up to be monstrous and murderous in the sewers. He nourishes himself by preying on the corpses of other animals who have undergone dubious laboratory experiments. After escaping the sewers, he begins attacking residents. This is when he catches the attention of a police officer who sets out to capture him with the help of a reptile expert. For most people, Alligator served as more of a comedy film than horror. Although this gator flick was the epitome of a B-movie, it sure scored in the casting department, with Tarantino's favorite Robert Foster and Robin Riker. To this day, Alligator continues to be the film that is compared to Jaws. Even though the movie's script is rock solid with a screenwriter like John Sayles, it isn't one which is taken seriously. Believe it or not, at one point, Alligator was placed in Time Magazine's Richard Corliss's top 10 list of favorite films. The film was shot during a pre-CGI era. Ramon the alligator was actually played by a combination of pre-CGI animatronic effects and a real live alligator. Shakma, 1990. This 1990 horror movie, directed by Tom Logan and Hugh Parks, Stars Christopher Atkins and Amanda Weiss in lead roles. It portrays a baboon who is being experimented on by a group of medical students and their professor. When the professor administers a drug that is supposed to reduce aggression, it has the opposite impact on the baboon. One night, while the students are playing a fantasy roleplay game in their research facility, it escapes and begins showing aggressive behavior, like killing and injuring people. Until you watch this film, you're thinking, there's no way a baboon can cause so much destruction and murder people all by itself. Your opinion will change awfully fast after witnessing the true horrors of Shakma. It's mostly filled with violence and portrays the actions of Shakma attacking and killing other animals and people in the lab. Yes, there are some scenes that make you roll your eyes, but who knew that a baboon barely the size of a full-grown dog could give people the creeps? Ultimately, Shakma is a significantly entertaining B-movie with a touch of gore and a willingness to get rid of any character, no matter how likable they may be. Shakma is played by Typhoon, a famous baboon who has also acted in movies like The Fly, 1986, and Duncan Jacks's baboon in Order of the Black Eagle. Prophecy, 1979. Prophecy is an American sci-fi horror film made right at the turn of the decade, directed by John Frankenheimer. Set in the Androscoggin and Ossipee River, the film portrays an environmental agent and his wife as they file a report on a paper mill on the riverbank. They are unaware that the waste from the paper mill caused a local bear to mutate and grow up into a savage beast. Driven mad by the toxic waste material that poisoned the water, she goes out on a killing spree around the Maine countryside. Prophecy is a film that is a lot more complex than it's given credit for. Viewers often undermine the impact that it creates as an ecological film. It contains several moments of suspense among the characters when they are faced with the beast, and portrays the helpless and careless nature of human beings. Moreover, it's also praised for being a 70s movie with a social message and using top-notch special effects. In addition, with a movie about the preservation of the environment comes good quality cinematography and, as a bonus, a great musical score by Leonard Rosenman. If nothing else, hopefully it teaches companies not to dump their industrial waste in bodies of water, or else they may get attacked by a large, bloody, murderous bear.
Pika, baby! I lied! It does have to hurt.
Sleepwalkers, 1992. Charles and his mother, Mary, moved to a small town in Indiana after recently leaving Bodega Bay, California, where they murdered a young girl and drained her blood. They are both sleepwalkers, nomadic vampires, like shapeshifters whose source of energy are the life forces of young virgin women. Charles joins the local high school, where he meets Tanya and asks her out on a date, which she agrees to. Unbeknownst to her, he also picks her as his next victim. During their date, he tries to drain her of her life force. But then, interesting turn of events change the game. This is Stephen King's first screenplay that is not based on one of his pre-existing works. Sleepwalkers received mixed responses over the years. The film has action, suspense, and drama, but all of them have a hint of silliness that simply cannot be overlooked. More importantly, a film where Stephen King, Clive Barker, and Joe Dante make cameos would normally be any film buff's dream come true. But no one expected to see that in a B-movie. However, the film has received appreciation for its abnormally cheesy dialogue, great cast, and more importantly, the dose of horror in this film was just right. In addition, viewers also enjoyed the special effects and background music that it used. If you're someone that is on the lookout for a super scary movie, this isn't the movie for you. If Bram Stoker found out that this is how his concept of vampires has been modified, he would turn over in his grave. Return of the Killer Tomatoes, 1988. As far as B-movies go, this one had a remarkable cast. How many B-movie directors can say that George Clooney and Anthony Stark have starred in their film? This is an American parody film where a mad scientist, Professor Gangrene, is cooking the second coming of the Great Tomato Uprising. In this, he dips tomatoes into toxic waste and places them in the presence of music, which converts them into replicas of human beings. This will enable them to fight in the second wave of the Great Tomato War. Chad, a pizza boy, is the only one who can save the world. This movie might serve as the epitome of absurd entertainment. Simply reading the plot makes one curious about it. It is a perfect portrayal of a silly and intentionally cheesy 80s classic. Although the premise is peculiar, people watch it for its colorful cinematography and exaggerated dramatics. And not many people would want to miss George Clooney's debut. Even though this movie had a decent budget, it is still considered a B-movie, which is why it couldn't stir up the hype it hoped. Nevertheless, it managed to acquire a decent fan following. Scarecrows, 1988. This 1988 American horror film follows a group of mercenaries who hijack a plane in California and kidnap the pilot and his daughter. They make an emergency landing in a cornfield and realize that it is actually an abandoned graveyard. This graveyard is swarming with evil scarecrows that are possessed by spirits. Scarecrows is the perfect example of a movie that used a mediocre plot and still managed to make a more than mediocre film out of it. Director William Wesley is well aware that, like clowns, scarecrows are eerie, creepy creations. The movie is not unknown to high critical acclaim. It has been compared to a poor man's zombie movie where much of the focus is on the atmosphere. Moreover, the entire film was created in real time in a singular location. This ensures a claustrophobic tension which it might receive from viewers. Finally, it does not contain the usual gore that 80s horror films did, and most of the violence occurs off-screen. There is both an R-rated version and an unrated version of this film. The latter is approximately 4 minutes longer than the R-rated one and features additional action and gore sequences which were eliminated from the official release. The Deadly Spawn, 1983. The Deadly Spawn is director Douglas McEwan's 1983 American sci-fi horror film. It begins with two campers in the woods of New Jersey being interrupted by the crashing of a meteorite in the area. While they investigate the scene, they are violently murdered by alien parasites that emerge from the rock. After killing the campers, the alien parasite-like creatures head towards the town. Here, they settle down in the basement of an old house and begin killing helpless residents. 4 teenagers and a younger boy discover the truth and try to find a way to stop the parasites before they procreate and destroy all of humanity. This is an interesting B-movie with a surprisingly large cult following. It's been compared to films like The Evil Dead and Reanimator. The gore and special effects are really good. In addition, Douglas McEwan, despite making a low-budget film, makes an effort to develop his characters before they die gory deaths later on. It's unfair, however, that it's referred to as a ripoff of Aliens, when the only thing they have in common is the unknown creatures arriving from another planet. This film was almost picked by Paramount Pictures for a theatrical release, but due to some financial clashes between the creators and studio, it never happened. Hardware, 1990. The plot explores the future, where Earth is transformed into a radioactive wasteland, and the seas have evaporated, leaving it to look like a post-apocalyptic desert. Now, Nomad, a desert scavenger, discovers a robotic head in New York City and sells it to Moses Baxter, a space marine who wants to gift it to his girlfriend Jill for Christmas. While Jill wants to use the head for one of her sculptures, things take a turn for the worse once it's activated and begins to rebuild itself. Soon, Alvy, a junkyard dealer, recognizes it as a Mark 13, a military cyborg of an abandoned project. Moses finds out that Jill's life is at risk when the Mark 13 sets out on a rampage in her building, and she becomes the primary target for extermination. This 1990 British sci-fi horror film stars Dylan McDermott and Stacey Travis in lead roles. It also serves as screenwriter Richard Stanley's directorial debut. The premise of the movie is based on a short story entitled Shock that appeared in 1980 in the Judge Dredd Annual 1981, a spin-off publication of the popular British weekly anthology comic 2000 AD. The monster in this movie is so well made and horrifying, it was a perfect blend of animatronics and special effects. Richard Stanley has presented the narrative in a clean manner that makes it easy for the viewers to understand without leaving anything to the imagination. The movie is extremely visceral, with religious iconography spread throughout, with a straightforward narrative. The abundance of industrial music, cultural references, and cameos, among other things, definitely accentuates the movie's entertainment factor to the next level. Stung, 2015. Mrs. Perch, an elderly rich woman from rural America, decides to throw a garden party at her remote villa in the countryside. While this is an annual event for her, this year her illegally imported plant fertilizer seeps into the soil. As a result of this, a local species of wasps that lay their eggs in the same soil mutate into predators that are 7 feet tall. They find the perfect prey in the upper-class company attending the party. Paul and Julia are 2 members of the catering staff who can stop the creatures and save everyone's lives. Stung is a German-American independent romantic horror comedy directed by Benny Diaz. Many viewers appreciated this film because of the resemblance it bore to the standard 70s and 80s animal horror genre. It also received high praise for its good old-fashioned gore and special effects. While Stung's description includes the comedy aspect, it's not a very funny movie. However, it is worth watching for the 7-foot-tall wasps, which is something you have to see to believe. And the fact that it's not a film that takes itself seriously. Although it's a movie with a generic plot and average chemistry between the actors, it's still a B movie worth a try, pun intended.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.